Hey everybody, this is Talkative Carl back again for another spoiler review of Spider-Man Homecoming. We're at the home stretch here. Just got this Far From Home and then Spider-Verse to do a review of before we lead into No Way Home in the next month. So we got at least uh, by this point in time we got like 3 weeks before, no, 4 weeks before uh Homecoming comes out. Like, so pretty much a month from now. This time by tomorrow, there's because today's been announced, there will be a new Spider-Man Far From Home trailer, a full trailer, not like a short teaser, coming out this time tomorrow. Probably be doing a discussion video for that once I check it out. So that might be a little bit early, or at least as soon as I can. Uh, but I mean, this is exciting, and it's like every news is just adds to the excitement for me because I'm a huge Spider-Man fan, and I mentioned this before. No matter how this movie turns out in December, because I'm going to see it on Thursday, and probably going to take a day off from work on that following Friday if I have to work that Friday to just digest it. I want to do like a late spoiled review, but I just want to like another day just to digest it because I'm gonna be in awe of this movie because I don't care how it turns out, to be honest, good or bad. I just want this movie to exist. I really want, because who would have fathomed, well, who would have, I mean, like, it's probably would have been more simpler with the Spider-Verse animated movie. That was a little bit more feasible to do, because you can just get random voices to do different variations of Spider-Man that we've seen in, animated or live action willy nilly if you wanted to, but you actually get a live action, and it still haven't. Well, we're probably gonna find out by the trailer tomorrow. I know I'm gonna be doing a discussion video about this in full depth, but I just want to let you know how excited I am. The fact that, like, they've been playing coy with this, like whether or not Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield is gonna be in this movie, but it's like it's fairly obvious because you got all their villains, and it's like you can't have just Tom Holland dealing with not only six villains and, spoiler alert, Venom as well by himself, and most of these people he doesn't know and don't know how to deal with. And I'm gonna bring this up probably tomorrow in the discussion video. I just want to say now, just in case I forget, my surmise, because people are concerned with, like, they might lose focus on Tom Holland, but if Sony applies the same blueprint as Spider-Verse, as like, because Spider-Verse managed to focus on Miles Morales, but have these other variations of Spider-Man be his, kind of like his foundations in a way, or at least the shoulder to lean on kind of situation. Uh, they need to apply that same thing here, where, yeah, if when Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield are introduced, because it's suspected that the first half will be introducing the villains, and then the second half of the movie will be, introducing these two other Spider-Man that we knew. And I believe personally that this movie should be, at least could or should be, about Tom Holland's version being his own man, his own Spider-Man. Because in the past two movies, or in slash MCU crossovers he did, he's always focused on or leaned on Tony Stark or Mysterio or Vulture, as like surrogate fathers or like mentor figures, or even Doctor Strange in this, upcoming one. And I believe that the lesson he should be learning from these other Spider-Men, from their experience, that you have to essentially grow up. I mean, like it's fine and dandy that you learn from your betters, but you have to learn, go your own way. You have to be your own man. You gotta take what you learn from them and utilize it in your own way and move forward. Especially eventually, because it's already been established with Aaron Davis and him having a nephew and blah 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 in Homecoming, which we'll get into in a second. But he has to, be his own Spider-Man. You don't have to lean on anybody else for guidance. He and this movie is gonna be at a point where he's like, in his last year of school, I think. So he's definitely gonna be going to like college and everything like that. So he's going to have to, be in a position to, like I said, like just become his own man. So like that's why I'm hoping this movie will be about. So that way he just get the guidance without them, showing him up or overshadowing his, because he's the central focal point, obviously. But that's what I gotta say about it. I'll get more into it once I do a discussion video after I see the new trailer. I believe there's gonna be a new trailer tomorrow. It's been like going over social media all today. Anyway, Spider-Man: Homecoming. All right, man, and this movie still holds up because, like I mentioned before in my The Amazing Spider-Man 2 review, check that out on my channel whenever you get the chance. And of course, follow me on my various channels, links in the description. Talkative Carl on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Patreon, if you want to support the channel. But after Spider-Man 2, I think technically by Civil War, you get like the quintessential Spider-Man that we knew like straight off the page from the comics. Because, not that, Andrew Garfield or Tobey Maguire didn't do a good job. It's just that they just fall short on bits and pieces here and there. Because like, I mentioned in previous in the films that I did reviews of the Sam Raimi versions and the Mark Webb versions, it's just, Andrew Garfield made a perfect Spider-Man, while Tobey Maguire made a perfect Peter Parker. Yeah, I think I got that right. And Tom Holland, by the time we get to this point, and maybe because I doubt it's, at this point, it was thanks to Sony, because they have to work with, because pretty much it's like, their goal was to make a Sinister Six movie and all the other stuff. They're doing that now, but at that time they kind of fell through after the epic fail. I won't say epic fail, but just the fail of The Amazing Spider-Man 2. But by a certain point, they had to like just share the rights to Spider-Man with Disney and the MCU. Hopefully that will still continue for it, because if you remember that little brief stint where like their deal kind of like was like, mucked up for some reason, and Disney's blaming and Marvel's blaming Sony, and Sony's blaming them, and eventually they worked it out. Who knows how long that will continue though? But by this point, things I believe thanks to the Disney and Marvel, they got it just right. And I can still remember the applause, roaring in the theater when I went to go see Captain America: Civil War, when we knew he's coming in, but the fact that when you actually in the seats and seeing like him webbing up Cap's hands and stealing his shield, and it's like, hey everyone, and just the erupting applause as he got Spider-Man in the MCU. That was a highlight. I think that's one of the most talked about scenes in the film. Probably to this day, it's probably one of the most highlighted parts of the film. But now we get to see, like, in the beginning of this film, is kind of like, coming off of that, what's going on with Spider-Man after the events of that film. or at least leading up to his, jumping in and tail end of the fight, leading into this film. You get to see him, like, it's a cool thing because I'm pretty sure around this time, or even to this day, kids would have videotaped their little, trip travel, to on his way to Berlin and with Happy and everything like that. And him and Happy's interactions is hilarious. And he's just like, it's your first time on a plane. It's like, it's the first time on any plane. And he's just like, he still want to sit with the kid, and he's like, and he just messing with him while he's trying to sleep. And like, kudos to Tom Holland, because one of the reasons he got this gig as to be Spider-Man, he does his own stunts. Does a lot of parkour, and it's like, dude's ripped as hell. And it's like he does his own, like you see, like several times, like he does all these crazy flips and everything like that. It's like dude's legit good. It's like spot on. It's like you will never see this from Tobey Maguire nor Andrew Garfield. And he's like a spot on age, because that's one of the complaints from the previous two actors is by the time they was cast, it wasn't really their fault. It's just like the casting directors chose them, or the studios chose them because they qualified for the role, but they wasn't going to stay in high school for too long, so they made them all seniors already, kind of situation, so that way it won't be as awkward. But we didn't have enough time seeing him in his high school days, and that wouldn't have worked with them because they were, well into getting to like mid to late 20s, getting to their 30s at that time. And well, not not like late 30s, obviously not late 30s, obviously, but it was like it was near approaching. There was like late 20s, getting into their 30s, around this time. So with Tom Holland, he's in his like, at the time of him being cast, he was like, early 20s, getting into his mid 20s. So and he's very young, boyish in his face. So it's like he can easily pull off high school kid. So it is just like a phenomenal casting choice. So he's vlogging all the way, like he's like, in Berlin, got the new Spider-Man suit. A lot of people complain, well, not a lot of people. They love the suit. I just want to mention this. People love I definitely love the MCU Spider-Man suit, but one of the complaints people talked about is how it's like too techy for Spider-Man, because he is smart and he, kind of builds his rudimentary type of gadgets, kind of like he MacGyvers his own kind of gadgets, whatever resources he can, gather. But with this, is all very Tony Starkish, and it is pretty much, of course, we didn't have it at the time, but it's pretty much the PS4 Spider-Man game where you collect all these kind of gadgets and different types of web shooters and all this other stuff. It's pretty much that. And most people's complaints is like, Spider-Man wouldn't have all these things. But I really did not mind it. And like, I think vast majority of the people who have can easily gloss over that because how good everything is. He had like a spot on, like, Queen's accent. I didn't catch it at first because I'm not from New York, so I don't know. Their dialect all sound the same to me. But I had to like really focus on it to, because he's from the UK, but he does like a pretty good, not only American accent, but like Queens. It's like, okay, this is pretty good. And so on the way back, he's he's already got his like feel, on like, be on like an Avengers mission and working with Tony Stark, and seeing all these like heroes and everything like that he's seen like probably on YouTube or whatever. And he's only been Spider-Man for like 6 months, I guess prior to this, prior to Civil War, but Tony Stark pretty much like just let him know, like, don't do anything I wouldn't do. Don't do anything I would do. Just try to be in the middle, and he just like pretty much want him to like stay low to the ground. And like he doesn't want like because he's still a kid, and Tony like is like pretty much understands the fact that because he mentions later in the film it's like it was already ridiculous bringing this. He needed extra hands to try to wrangle up Cap and his crew, trying for because of the Sokovia Accords. But he needed extra hands, and he found this kid, and he kind of put him on the front lines, which is tantamount to like forced draft in a way, which is obviously illegal. But he kind of want this kid to like, okay, stay in your own lane, be low to the ground, just stop little muggers and beggars, just do little like the little guy stuff kind of situation, something that maybe not that hardcore like Daredevil, but something similar where it's like street level crime, something at his speed. He ain't dealing with like crazy Zemo level, Loki level type of stuff, because even though I think Spider-Man can handle himself, but he probably more than likely at this stage of the game will be overwhelmed, because this is like it's kind of like with Miles Morales in in his game, where it's like pretty much trial and error. This is like a coming of age kind of situation, trial and error. He got figured himself out before he eventually be able to handle the next level, the next big boss in a way, and be a little bit more mature about handling certain things. Now he's like, back at home. It was a funny moment in the car, and it still cracks me every time I see it, because I almost forgot, because it's been such a long time since I've seen Homecoming, whereas like you get that little hug, you think he's hugging, it's like, no, not hugging, we're just getting the door. We're not there yet. It was so funny, and it still cracks me up. I remember like people getting cracked up. It was in the trailer, but people still cracked up in the theater when they're seeing that stuff. Just that miscommunication on Peter's part, and it's so freaking funny. But of course, that comes about full circle in Endgame, and of course, I'm not going. We all seen Endgame at this point, but what I'm talking about, how it will come full circle in that. So now it's already been like I was like at least pretty sure like at least a couple of months at this point, 2 or 3 months. No, because he's in contact with like Happy, and like he's like the go between him and Tony. If Tony's too busy to call him himself, he's leaving like Happy all these messages, and text messages, phone messages, want to know like when's the next mission. He's like, it's already like psyched for the next thing. He's like, he's a little kid. He's he like that experience is kind of like hyping up his head at this point. Now he's like, oh, I'm ready to handle the big times kind of situation. He's getting too big for his britches. And something that Tony should have, of course, it's Tony Stark we're talking about, but it's something that he, or at the very least Happy, should have like put him, put him in the mindset is like, or at least maybe they didn't fully explain, but they should have like sound down, or at least the last time I spoke to him. It's like look, we'll contact you when it's gonna be like another mission, but at the time it's probably not gonna be a while, so rest easy, just do your thing in the neighborhood. When something comes up, trust me, we'll call you, but like you don't have to keep bugging us almost every day about this stuff. We'll call you, trust and believe. And that's the thing, because it's kind of convenient when they want to answer his phone calls. And it's like, maybe not in the first month after he got back from Berlin, but maybe in the second and into the third month, when he's leaving Happy all these messages, you would think Happy wouldn't be that busy to try to return his calls, especially even if he's busy during the day, doing day-to-day stuff. At some point when he has some downtime, he will call this kid back and say, like, because we all been there. At least most of us been there when they constantly calling somebody and they will eventually call you back. If not that day, definitely the next day, and say, like, I see your messages. Like, what's going on? I mean, honestly, we all been there. It's like, why wouldn't Happy at some point call, return his calls, maybe at even on the day of, next day, or at least the latest, the very third day, to say, like, hey, like, or at least message him back saying, like, hey, I got your messages. I'm busy. We'll call you when the next mission. Don't worry about it. And just, put his mind at ease, and so he can, like, lay off for a little bit and just, like, go about his business. Because, that's the one thing I kind of, like, glaringly, like, saw that was kind of, like, not bizarre, but it's kind of like something that realistically people would not, allow to carry on for 3 months without speaking, calling somebody back, unless something happened to them or you're mad at them or something. Especially someone like a kid that you have a direct line to, that like, that's like Tony's mentoring. You would think, like, okay, something must going on, or at least in your mind you would think, like, oh, he's calling this many times, let me answer this kid, because he seems very eager to talk with us at this point. It's not like they're trying to contact SHIELD or anything like that, because they definitely would not call you back unless they freaking felt like it. But anyway, so in the meantime, Peter's back at school. He's like just not even thinking about, because that's his whole thing. It's like he's getting too big for his britches, where he's eventually, little by little throughout the movie, he becomes less interested in day-to-day school life. Like, at this point, he's like constantly monitoring the clock, waiting for, like, time, to hit 3 so he can, like, book it and do his Spider-Man thing. So it's like, you meet Ned Leeds. Of course, they call him just Ned in this point. They'll officially call him Ned Leeds in the Far From Home. But I kid you not, to this day, and that's the one other glaring thing that, like, just, like, slapped me in the face, and I think didn't infuriate me, but it's just, like, glaringly obvious. The actor they cast to play Ned looks like the spitting image of Miles Morales' best friend Ganke Lee in the comics. Like, spot on. If you look up Ganke Lee, Marvel Comics, and you pull up Ned Lee's in MCU, side by side, it looks spot on. Now, upon, like, a bit of research, the director who cast Ned Leeds, they wanted like a combination. They trying to merge together with like because they want, like, Peter Parker to have, like, a best friend. They didn't want to introduce Harry Osborn at this point, not even the second one. But I'm pretty sure by, if not No Way Home, but in the next Spider-Man film, they would, at least, they probably at least mention Harry Osborn in No Way Home. But, normally that's Peter Parker's best friend, and Ganke Lee is Miles' best friend. So they kind of like, Ned Leeds is like in the comics is like first or second Hobgoblin. I'm pretty sure it's the second Hobgoblin, and like the most iconic Hobgoblin. Now, the actor who played Ned Leeds has, if you see him in recent, like, trailers and, like, interviews and stuff like that, or even if you're following Tom Holland on Instagram, like I am, he lost like a considerable amount of weight. Now, I'm believing, like, well, obviously maybe for health reasons personally, for him, but I also believe he's also doing that because they're gonna probably want him to play Hobgoblin in, like, a future Spider-Man movie, and it's a quintessential thing for a spider hero to have like a best friend that turns evil in some fashion. At least one best friend that eventually like goes bad, and they cause like drama for Spider-Man's life. And it'll be like a sad day if that pans out that way for Ned Leeds after we got to know him so long, up to the point of No Way Home, and just to see him, make a heel turn. But yeah, like, honestly, that's like, I don't know why they should just call him Genki Lee and just be done with it instead of just calling him Ned. He doesn't look like Ned. They could have cast somebody else to be Ned, but it is what it is. But it's just like, it was glaringly obvious. They they saw this kid, and it's like, we got to make him Genki Lee and just rewrite. Instead of calling him Ned Leeds, just call him Genki Lee and just be done with it. I'm pretty sure people are gonna be complaining about like, oh, that's Miles Morales' best friend. You can't be Peter Parker's best friend. So I doubt they could have won either way. But it was just like, it was just a glaringly obvious kind of not a distraction, but it's kind of like, it's just obvious, what they were doing or not doing. Anyway, it's like, as far as like nerds of the modern day, they into like Lego Star Wars and talking about assembling this like big Lego set and everything like that. So and they're into science and everything like that. So it's like, yeah, this fits what like Peter's little close knit circle. And and then like throughout the days, like you see like this is one moment where you get to see Michelle Jones, but MJ comes. I'm not gonna go beat around the bush. Zendaya's playing MJ. It's obvious it's MJ, and we already knew. It was like so obvious that she's gonna be MJ. It wasn't. It was so obvious it hurts. Currently, right now in real life, Tom Holland and Zendaya are actually dating. And the funny thing is, it didn't work out, but they still did it. Tobey Maguire and Kristen Dunst and Emma Stone and Andrew Garfield dated for a short period of time. And it didn't end. Well, I would say it didn't end well, but it just kind of ended the relationships. But it's a weird thing. I was like, it's not odd because there's plenty of actors who dated each other during the time of filming, i.e., Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie during the whole Mr. and Mrs. Smith movie. But for the Spider-Man and their love interest, the actors always ended up like dating. I just hope this one actually works out well. They're actually like a good couple that I like to see together. And I like the twist on they did with MJ in this franchise, because in the comics, which is ironic, this is the ironic part. In the comics, they shared this it was kind of obvious in this, like, in the comics, MJ has like, if you've seen like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, that kind of obviously touched on it, and she has like a kind of like a broken home life. And it's so bad that she MJ in the comics had this like very outgoing party life. She did almost everything she could to like just hang out with her friends, do all this stuff. So she did not want to go back home. She have her own kind of mask that she put up to guard herself. And in this version, she kind of very like emo-esque type of MJ. Very dark, because in the next film I'll mention she'll like the Black Dahlia kind of situation, because obviously she has a trouble home, and she like almost bees everywhere, but she seems like she's almost everywhere but home. She says like this kind of like edgelord type of character. It's like you see Peter and Gang. I'm just calling him Gang. I'm freaking calling him Ned. Sitting at the lunch table looking at Liz Allen, the first love interest of Peter Parker in this film, who they're just eyeing, and she's like the popular hot chick in school, and she's sitting across from them without them even noticing, like, because they mentioned like, we better stop looking before it gets creepy. Too late. You guys are losers. You sitting with us. That's because I don't have no friends. And then it's like another moment when like Peter is like in like the practice for the decathlon thing, academic decathlon thing. He's practicing in the gymnasium, and like he's mentioned to this teacher who forgot his name, but he was in Silicon Valley. It was like kind of like the same kind of like attitude as MJ has in this film, that little edgelord attitude, but he's different, kind of personality. It's more like kind of like a nerdy dad, Alata's dad kind of attitude. And he's she's sitting there as they all listen to like Peter saying like, oh, I gotta stay home. I can't go on this like trip because Mrs. Stark could easily call me. I need to be here and make sure that I can go on the next internship or whatever like that. And like MJ just spoke up out of nowhere, just sitting in a corner, just nobody even noticed her, and she's like he also like quit this class and that class too. Like I'm not stalking him. I'm just observant. And he ends up getting detention later, and she's already there. So she clearly has like obvious kind of crush on Peter, which bears fruit in the second film. So I really like this version of MJ, and like which is like I mentioned about the ironicness. Real life, Zendaya is a supermodel, and in the comics, MJ. Well, I'm pretty sure currently in the comics she's like an actress, but she's also like did like supermodeling in the comics back in the day. That was her whole thing for the longest time. And it's like, it's ironic you actually get like a supermodel playing MJ, and it's great, even though she's not like, because MJ is probably like the best love interest in comic book history. It's right up there with like Lois Lane, as far as like the more popular one. And even though she's not like a redhead, this works just as well. And I like the way what was it? John Watts, is that the director? Yeah, John Watts take on MJ in this is like it's one of those moments where like they do a different take on a character and everybody's just on board with it. There was no like hate over it or nothing like that. Everybody was on board for Zendaya to be MJ. At least from what I remember. I don't think I recall anybody. If it was done today, I'm pretty sure it would be like social media, like those racist bigots talking about like, oh, not my MJ. My MJ is like a white redhead and not black. If it was done today, I'm pretty sure you got tons of those. But I don't think it was that many back then, if at all. But so yeah, he's Peter's just shirking all his like schooly duties in order to like make room for any chance he can just dip out and go on these like big epic superhero adventures. He's a kid, and like what kid around his age would not want to like hop on board for the superhero mission, especially one being his idol. It's like he any one of us will cut out time any which way at that age. I mean, wouldn't now, older with like more responsibilities. And that's the key thing here when it comes to Peter Parker. He's all about responsibility, and he at this moment is shirking his responsibilities for something that he clearly wants to do. And they didn't do the origin story, and clearly from Civil War, we reworded the great power must come great responsibility. Like we worded it in a stupid way that didn't roll off the tongue at all. But it's the same way what they did with Andrew Garfield's version. They reworded that famous line into a more wordy thing, and it didn't sit well. But we get what they was trying to say. But something happened to Uncle Ben. They didn't do the origin story, which a lot of people appreciate it. They skip over that part because we've seen it like a 50 million times. Just like we see Superman, as a baby crashing to Earth, and Krypton blowing up 50 million times. Batman's parents getting shot 50 million times. We all seen those particular origin stories too much, you know, at this point where we can just prefer them to just skip over. We get it. We know. It's like these three heroes are the most iconic, worldly, well-renowned icons in pop culture that anybody, even if you're not a comic book fan, you know their origin story. These three, it's like permeated the zeitgeist to the point where even like my father, who's not a big, comic book fan, but he knows, well enough to know how Spider-Man's origins, pan out. He knows. It's, he knows the gist of it. I'm just glad they gloss over that. But it's like, yeah, he pretty much like not following the lesson he probably should have learned from what happened to Uncle Ben, which they never even reference Uncle Ben, but they did touch on in a later scene when Genki finds out that he's Spider-Man, and he's too excited. He want to talk to people, but he's like, no, you can't bring it up because I can't put Aunt May through that. Not again. You know what happened, and it's like, and we get that, and that was an impressive line read because we understood what he's describing, and I'm just flabbergasted a bit because from that lesson that he obviously should have learned from that touched on story, he haven't grasped the fact that you have a responsibility. You at your age, your responsibility is schoolwork. Get through, go through your classes, do your homework, graduate school, and go to college so you can try to better your life. He's want to call that after he got these powers. He want to call all that out, and it's like a roundabout way of what happened when Peter goes to that wrestling ring. He wants to just in a way be famous, or at least well renowned, and because as he put it in the film, it's like I'm so beyond high school, and that's the thing he ends up one of the things he ends up having to learn is that these things are important, and it's you're not gonna be as he learned from not only from Tony but also the villain, the Vulture, is that each one had their own bit of responsibilities in their own way, and you have your own responsibilities in your lane that you cannot just toss to the side and don't think is important to you because you think you see something bigger and better, and that's not the way to go. Especially because high school is actually easily the most important part, because you can get your graduate, because there's a lot of places that prefer, for the most part, you having a high school degree bare minimum. Getting a college degree in anything, depending on what it is, it's just an extra bonus. Anyway, so he's out in the neighborhood, and he's dealing with all these day-to-day, helping the neighborhood. A funny little moment where he's trying to think he's stopping a carjacking, but he's stopping a guy who's trying to break in his own car, and it's total Spider-Man thing. It's he making very rookie mistakes, but every once in a while he's getting it right, he just stopping a bike jacker and all this other stuff. It's it's a cool Spider-Man moments, and you see neighborhood people asking him to do the flip, and he's just he's the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. And early in the film you get to see Adrian Toomes, the Vulture, played by Michael Keaton, and it's him and his crew, who what do you call them, their company. It's they're a salvage company, And it's funny because like Adrian Toomes is the Vulture, and a Vulture, you know, feeds off of like scraps or he's a scavenger, and it's funny how like he owns a salvage company to pick up the scraps after the battle in New York situation in 2012, all the dead aliens and all the tech and stuff. They pick some up and everything like that. But then Damage Control come in, swoop in, and steal their business. So they pretty much like out of a job and this big lucrative contract and everything like that. So they decide, okay, we're going to business on our own, and like whatever tech they did take already, they repurposed it to make Adrian Toomes' flying wings, and like Bryce slash Montana, who was like the original Shocker, and then working with Herman Schultz, who is the current Shocker. Got those vibrating gauntlets, who are like repurposed crossbones punchy thing like you saw in the early parts of Civil War. And you meet like the Tinkerer in here. So this crew is pretty much like selling like alien tech and to earn some cash. Now he Peter having a point when he's like him and Ned is like going out to this party hosted by Liz Allen. Now of course they get invited to the party because Ned him blurting out, because earlier it's like Ned sitting there like asking 50 million questions about like if you shoot your webs out like really really far, like how far does it go? It's like do you spit venom, like do you like eggs? And it's like it's like all day it's like asking him all these like really dumb questions. Well, I mean not dumb to him, but it's like kind of like he's not taking a hint that he's bugging his friend like with 50 million Spider-Man questions. It's like, dude, chill the fuck out. And he's like, obviously, he's gonna get. And then so in gym class, it's like overhearing like Liz and her friends talking about how hot like Thor is and blah blah blah. And Liz mentions like how she like got a thing for Spider-Man, and like Ned's like, Piano Spider-Man. It's like, you dumb bastard. Like why would you think that was okay at all? And of course him being like a kind of like a dumb teenager is like is about girls and popularity, so that's his mindset, not thinking about like the consequences of that, because he want to keep his secret identity. So he's like, oh, like he works at a Stark Internship, so he met Spider-Man. So in order to like get their invite to the popular kids party, they say like, oh, well, I can easily bring Spider-Man along, kind of situation. And of course you also meet like Flash Thompson, this time played by Tony Revolori, who this version of Flash Thompson is like more of like a internet bully type of age, and not the physical bully that we seen like Manganiello played during the Sam Raimi first Sam Raimi film, which is like a fitting choice. And is not like originally Flash Thompson got the name Flash Thompson because he was playing football and he's like he move fast, he's like in a flash. But in this version he's named Flash Thompson because like he always quick to like get to the answer and be right and all that stuff, and it usually doesn't pan out because it doesn't mean you just because you're the fastest doesn't mean like you're always gonna be right. And he goes he does his line all through the movies, like calling him Penis Parker, And it's like it was funny at first in first viewing, but after like second, third, it's like kind of died down. It's gonna be less funny. Uh, but after getting ready to like jump in as Spider-Man to this party, he sees like like a big blue explosion off in the distance. So, and he's like a funny and kind of cool moment that you never really see in a Spider-Man, almost in anything. At least up until the point of this movie, you rarely saw him having to run or like traverse certain areas in order to get to a certain spot, because halfway through he couldn't web swing anymore because he's out in like a field, and certain branches he tried to web swing off of does not work well, obviously, because some branches won't hold his weight. And just a side note, because I didn't mention this earlier when I mentioned about the suit, I love that we finally get a face mask that actually show expression. It's like him and Deadpool's the only ones that actually show expression in the eyes that we know certain comic book characters with masks do. And I kind of wish, because prior to this it was always thought of as goofy, or at least too comic booky. I'm glad we came to a point where, especially after the Eternals, seeing like a Celestial, nothing is off the table. Like we can like do certain things with no, because like it's like I mean, like not like comic book viewers wouldn't have a problem with this. It's just the average moviegoer wouldn't find it too far fetched to see something fantastical, no matter how ridiculous they would have probably thought of it 10 years ago. And I'm so glad, and I want to see. Some people think like only Deadpool and Spider-Man can probably easily get away with this, but I believe like I don't know, maybe like certain instances with Batman or other characters with like full-blown masks, they show some, well, maybe not Batman, but it's like masks like Spider-Man or Deadpool, where it's like you don't see the pupils, but the eyes show some expression, so you can see like when they're shocked or something. And it's like I so appreciate that, and I thought that was so good, and I want more of that in other, like if you're doing like Green Lantern eventually, maybe we can do something like that. Well, this would be easy because they got just Hal Jordan and Kyle Rayner with the mask, and you don't have to really do like the white eyes, and it's more easier with the Domino mask to still show expression. But you catch my drift. I want to see more of that. He sees like two of Toombs's crew members trying to sell Aaron Davis, aka the Prowler, some weapons, but he just want like a normal gun just to stick up somebody. Because as he mentioned, it's really funny. Like, I'm not trying to shoot them through time, and he doesn't want to be oversold. So, in an opportune time when like Genki calling Peter while he's trying to be sneaky, and like the two members trying to point a gun at Davis, and like a cool Spider-Man moment where it's like jumping in, it's like, yo, if you're gonna shoot anybody, shoot me. And it's like it's like a cool thing, even though it's like a mugger and whatever like that, Spider-Man will do what he can to save lives no matter what, and that is just awesome. I appreciate that. That is freaking Spider-Man. So, they go off in their van, and Spider-Man gives chase. They end up calling Toombs, who comes in his Vulture costume, picks up Spider-Man, and then drops in, and like a parachute comes out. He falls into a lake, and in comes like Iron Man. Well, remotely controlled Iron Man suits come in, pick him up out of the water, and save him from drowning. And I do dig the dynamic between Tony and Peter. It's very father and son kind of thing, and you can tell, got a little bit better after meeting with like that Riley kid in Iron Man 3, where it's like, you get more like a little used to or more adept at handling children in his own way. Uh, After like, Peter's trying to explain that, hey, I found these guys. They handling these little crazy weapons. They put them on the street. We gotta stop them. And Tony's like, hey, you know, you let other people handle this stuff, and like you're not ready for all that. And it's like, I get what Tony's trying to do, because he's trying to keep that kid safe as much as possible. And of course, he's the adult. He knows better, and he has the experience. But well, you later find out, yeah, he was listening to the kid, but he doesn't do a good job at filling in. And that's the thing about like, certain parents in like movies that I've seen. It's like most of them don't do a good job and like laying it out properly and sincerely and respectfully to someone of their younger, of the younger age, child or otherwise, that this is why I don't want you handling this stuff. Stand aside. We got this and whatever like that. This is what I'm going to do. And instead of like the way he, outburst there, like, it's like after Peter asked, like, oh, why? Because I said so. It's like, okay, first of all, why are you shouting? So, because if I was Peter, it's like, okay, like, oh, like, what the hell are you yelling at me for when I'm trying to tell you what's going on, kind of situation. But it's like, this is Tony Stark we're dealing with. It's like he's not like going to be like an aces type of parent, but it's just like, at least not at first. It's like with Riley, Peter, then eventually his own daughter in Endgame. It's like he's having a tough time having to manage a teenager, but I'm pretty sure there's other like psychologists who probably seen this, who probably would know better how like to, hey, that's not how you probably properly talk with a kid, when especially when they're trying to tell you something crucially important. And like the whole because I said so thing usually is not the answer that a kid want to hear when they want to ask why. They want a good reason, like anybody else in the world would want a good reason when they ask a question like why. Because you wouldn't, if you're working at a job and you want to know something, when a boss tell you something and you ask them why, if you don't know, like you want like a reason for a particular choice or whatever, you're not going to accept the response as because I said so. Nobody responds properly to a response like because I said so. It makes you puts you in a certain way, like you make somebody put up a wall. You kind of like you fractured any kind of relationship. Not like fully fractured, but you put like a thing between a rift between you and that person after that period of that sentence. And that's why I really like had like not really having agreements with, but just certain choices in Tony Stark's handling of Peter in this film, at least bits and pieces, not fully, but bits and pieces. So Peter later on finds out like, yeah, he put a track in the suit, so that's how he knows how to find him, especially if like something indicates that he's like in extreme danger. He like either goes there himself or sends a suit there to get him out of that jam. So he's pretty much like just telling Peter off and like, hey, just do what I say, and everything be fine, kind of situation. Peter later finds like one of the pieces of like some kind of like Chitauri like a power cord thing, but not realizing it's technically a bomb that just needs to be irradiated in order to be active. But he doesn't know that, so he took it as a clue, back at home, and uh, Vulture is pissed at this point at Bryce, aka Montana, aka Shocker, which is like a funny moment where it's like, like, you know, because he's peed off that you know, uh, he's not flying under the radar because they survived so long because they stayed under the radar because they don't want Tony or the Avengers or Shield coming down on their heads, because they will at a first sign of anything being amiss with utilizing these things out in the open. And of course, like, Bryce is not like showing off that he doesn't give a f. And so after having it up to here with like this guy attitude, he thought it was like a gravity gun, but he got a disintegrator gun and disintegrated the sucker. And it's like the only shock that Toomes had is just the fact that, like, oh, he just got the wrong gun. And it's like, oh, moving on. And tosses Schultz, played by the great what's his name? Keep blanking on it because he's like one of those kind of like character actors. Bokeem Woodbine. I knew it has like a B in there somewhere. As like the current Shocker, Herman Schultz. And like, I honestly, I like, okay, like, I like this, I like him to be like the Shocker, and I want him to be like, I really want him to be like some point in a future Spider-Man movie, him being like the main villain. But I don't know. He could be a main villain. There's been times when the Shocker is like a main villain in a Spider-Man comic, and you can definitely set that up. But it could be argued that Shocker is just more of like a henchman type, or at least hired gun type of villain, not normally something you will see as like a main villain. What I really want to see is the Chameleon at some point in the future. I need to see the Chameleon. If we got Mysterio, we could definitely pull off a Chameleon. And maybe like in a 90s cartoon, instead of like just like an old school, him taking off a mask or changing costumes, he got like a belt that changes his appearance. And that would be feasible in like a movie format if you want to seem like you're doing like a very faux Mystique type of changing of appearance. Anyway, after looking into at school, looking into about the Power Core, Schultz is like tracing the energy signature and leading them back to the school, which is ironic because, well, we'll get to it, because it's like where they're at is intrinsically connected to Toomes in a rudimentary way, and so I'm surprised that ever came up. But Peter got the drop on them, put on a spider tracer, and at home sitting there tracking, see where their would-be lair would be. Once it finally stopped, it's like near DC, which only way to get there would be going on that decathlon, because that way, they can be able to stop these people. He doesn't really care about the decathlon thing. He just needs like a trip up there. So, on their way up there, Peter go ahead and sneaks off, and you see, like, because in the meantime they're in the hotel room and they fool around with the suit so that way they can take out the tracker, so that way it won't be, Peter don't have to be bugged, ironically bugged along the way, because he wants to prove himself, so he wants to be treated like a kid. And the funny thing is, the suit has more features in it, but it's been locked out. It's kind of like the game. It's like, once you reach a certain achievement, you get an unlocking of a new gear, and one of them being a voice in his head, like an AI, uh, who he calls Suit Lady. Later, Karen, but we didn't know at that time. But in current, they probably had to change it, or at least maybe not reference it. In No Way Home is that, like, can't call your AI Karen in this day and age because it's not going to look favorably right now. So you might as well stick with Suit Lady. But Ned found out like the locked protocols are called the training wheels protocol. You know, just a, just Tony Stark just being like a, just like a total jokester to the end, and it's like, Peter convinced Ned to, like, get all these things unlocked, so you have like full access to his skills. So while he's going in and take down, because he needs probably like he wanted like the firepower in order to take down the Vulture, because he's getting his butt trounced every which way every time you combat this dude. So he finds them hiding out near this like abandoned gas station, and it's like a funny little moment where it's like he's talking with the Suit Lady for the first time, and he's like, showing all these little like, gears like taser web and instant kills. Like, I don't need instant kill. You see that come about awesomely in Endgame, which is fun. But it's like all these little features that he's not familiar with that he's supposed to have unlocked one at a time, so he can, like, be properly prepared and have the know-how to use them. He kind of getting overwhelmed, so he almost getting caught while he's fooling around with all these different webs, like like a taser web. And once the crew is like tracking down these other shipments of Stark Tech, they hijack it. Peter tries to stop them, get himself knocked out on his own, and locked inside a the damage control center where they house all salvage tech that was left behind after like certain superhero battles. So Peter's locked inside for most of the night, missing the decathlon, but just in time to save his team and fellow students from the exploding Chitauri bomb that eventually got too hot and eventually was about to explode. But it was like a nice little moment inside where he's like getting to know his AI and then learning some of the webs while he's trying to wait for the thing to automatically unlock, until he realized it's going to take too long. He needs to save his friends before the thing explodes, so he has to force unlock it, which I don't know why he didn't come to that conclusion himself. Like, okay, I'm just going to manually unlock it, trying to get the heck out, because I ain't got time to wait. I wouldn't have time to wait. You got AI with you. You can, and you're scientists, so you can figure out a way to just, fool around with the mechanisms and the wiring in the building and get yourself out. He made it just in time. And like the Suit Lady is, played by Liv Tyler, who played Betty Ross in the Incredible Hulk movie, which is funny. And it's like a weird moment when, like, after he saves Liz and the students, you hear after Suit Lady hears Peter, tells her like, hey, I really like Liz, and I I don't know how she react if she finds out like I'm Spider-Man instead of somebody like Tony Stark. And she tells him while they like after he saved everybody, like, kiss her, Peter. I was like, whoa, it's like time and a place, Suit Lady. And it's like, be weird. They have like a weird kiss right in front of everybody at that exact moment. And of course that didn't happen. Pretty soon he followed the next evidence towards this little it was like a shipping, not a shipping boat, but it's like those supposedly carry like a ferry. A ferry, yeah, that was a ferry. Yeah, I don't know why I think it was like it wasn't a ferry. Uh, yeah, Staten Island ferry, and uh, while he's um, staking out outside the boat and just to see like this whole business because he gets info from Aaron Davis, uh, which is like a funny thing. Is like because Aaron Davis is kind of like a it's not like a full on evil, but he's just like a shades of gray kind of anti-hero. He's very like Black Cat in his way of doing things. It was very like he's not malicious or evil. He just by and large he's just like a thief. He's like Black Cat or Catwoman. It's like morally ambiguous. Don't has any qualms of killing anybody if he absolutely has to, but he by and large trying to avoid all that and just he's just like in it for himself, just stealing, just trying to survive kind of situation. And he not only gives Spider-Man info on where like the buy is gonna be, but not really interested on the hero aspect of it. But he is concerned about like those kind of weapons getting out on the streets because he mentions he has a nephew. We already know who that is. It's probably like the only person, almost like he still cares about his family by and large, but he cares about his nephew above all else. And that's why he gives up the information. It was a funny little moment where it's like Peter webbed his hand onto his trunk of his car, and he's like he doesn't bring him in. He's like, that's going to dissolve in 2 hours. Well, bye, Mr. Criminal. It's like, no, I got ice cream in here. You come fix this. It's like, it's a funny thing because like in the comics, the webs dissolves after an hour, not 2 hours. But I guess he kind of told him that just to mess with him in addition. But it's like a funny one. He's trying to be intimidating, but it doesn't work. But it's a nice little moment where like Aaron Davis just like trying to give him like helpful advice. It's just let him know like you gotta get better at doing this part of the job, because like he's no Batman when it comes to like interrogating criminals in order to get information. He's he's being try hard. That's the thing. It's just like just being himself. He's like just not letting it flow. So he's sticking out and he's getting he's avoiding Tony Stark's calls while he's trying to he's avoiding everybody's calls while he's trying to do this thing. And like the Vulture and the crew realize, and you get to see like a cameo of like the Mac Gargan, the Scorpion. You can tell he's the Scorpion because he got a tattoo of the Scorpion on the side of his neck, but we don't get to see the full-blown Scorpion. Maybe in a future Spider-Man film we'll get to see him, because eventually we'll have a Kraven the Hunter movie and then see Kraven the Hunter fighting Spider-Man. I really want a Chameleon and especially the Scorpion fight Spider-Man in a future film. The Vulture comes out, slices, uses one of the weapons to, shoot a beam to slice the ferry in half, while Peter is distracted. He's trying to web everything together. And also cool moment because you always gotta see Spider-Man trying to strain, holding something up, which we'll see later, or putting something together and trying to like over-reserve himself, max out his spider strength just to hold something together. And then it comes Tony Stark, Deus Ex Machina, and the situation, and like save the ferry. But then he gets like a Stern talking to, and it's like one of my favorite scenes, but also like hard to listen. I won't say hard to listen to, but it's kind of like I mentioned earlier, is just the way he talks to Peter, and he's like this is the part where you shut up, or this is the part where you listen. The grown-ups are talking, kind of situation. And it's like, yeah, I get it. He's like a pseudo guardian, because like while he's under his care, he's his responsibility, and that's the thing. Is the responsibility is like all over the place because it's a Spider-Man film. You hardly can tell a proper Spider-Man film if responsibility isn't like a theme in it. Like Peter has to be responsible of how he uses his powers, and like in his studies in school, and Toomes is responsible for his family, like in a dangerous way, and Tony Stark is responsible for Peter because, as he mentions, like, you know, as something happens on somebody under your watch, that's on you. But if something happens to you, that's on me. Because, like, everybody thought I was a fool for bringing like a teenager, into a fight like that overseas. And and he mentioned to Peter, like, because you think, like, Peter didn't listen to him in the first place. It's like, I did listen. And it's like, and you think Tony wasn't there, like, last time, but he showed up in person. And it's like, it's kind of like and he mentions, like, God, I'm turning to my father, or I sound like my father. And it's like, it's kind of like a parent showing up to your school when you messed up. And it's like, they kind of like the shock and awe of it, knowing that, because that, that dad glare that, Tony Stark is giving him. He giving off dad vibes because, Robert Downey Jr. is a dad. So he pretty sure he got that kind of, he gave those looks in his day. So he's coming out of that suit, giving like a straight up dad stare. And it's like, you have fucked up. I had to come all this way from wherever he was at the time, because he was in his car driving somewhere. He had to come all the way up here to clean up your mess. And it's like, he screwed up. And then the fact that he's pretty much like taking his car keys away, but he's taking his suit away because, like Peter mentions, like I can't, I'm nothing without a suit. If you're nothing without a suit, then you don't deserve it. And it's kind of like a lesson that Tony had to learn in, like, Iron Man 3. It's like, like the suit is not Iron Man. He is Iron Man. His brain is Iron Man. The suit is just like an accessory. And that's how Peter needed to start. Another lesson that Peter had to think is, like, he is Spider-Man. The suit is not Spider-Man. The suit doesn't make him Spider-Man. And he already has the gifts. He has the know-how. He just had to come to realize that he has to utilize those aspects. It's like if you're in, like, it's like a watch from Delia's World watch along, like I do on my channel. And one of the things, like a lot of those experts say is, like, it's not the weapons don't make the man. It's like, it's all up here. It's the mentality more so than anything else. Everything else is almost secondary. And it's like, that's what, in a sense, Peter has to learn. Spider-Man is up here and in here. The suit is an accessory. And, you get to see that come full circle at the end of, later on in the film. He, ends up, just going back to doing his normal school things. He's bummed out, but he's going back to his regular school work. He's showing up to class. He's hanging out with Ned and his Aunt May. He eventually got the courage to ask Liz out to the homecoming dance. And then going to the house, he, is big shocker to a lot of people in the audience that, at that moment, Toombs opened up the door and realizing that's Liz's father. And he just got this pale look on his face. And it was like brilliant acting from Tom Holland himself. Just the whole nervousness and the scared shitless he is the whole moment. He can't even enjoy the moment. Now he's just staring there. It's like being in the same room with Freddy Krueger and not, and the only one that knows that's Freddy Krueger. And he's trying to, like, play it straight the whole doggone time kind of situation. And he's like just barely making it. And on the ride, he's giving them a ride to the school dance, and then on the way there is Liz sitting there blurting out certain moments that Peter's been doing or have not been doing. He's piecing, together along the way. It's like, he's freaking Spider-Man. And it's like, as soon as, like, he tells Liz he's gonna give him the talk, and he's like, as soon as he leave into the building, he just, like, grabs his gun and just, like, leans over. It's just that moment is probably the scariest thing Vulture has done beyond just utilizing that suit. Honestly, just that one motion and just the gesture of it. And he's like, You're like, you know, does she know? No. Good. Look, you saved my daughter's life. That's something that, like, like I, respect, so much. So I'm gonna give you a chance. You go there, give my daughter a good time, not too good a time. Uh, don't ever interfere in my business, or I'll kill you and everybody you love. And it was like a, here's how here's how it should have ended. Web episode, YouTube episode when they did this. Uh, Talked about this movie, and it's like a funny line, a little skit they pulled up together where it's like, after he says like he'll kill everyone you love, and Peter could have said like, well, I love Liz, so that means you're gonna kill Liz. You win this round, Spider-Man. That'd be funny if he did that. But yeah, that was like a cool little scene. But then as he's marching in and he's coming to the realization that, and it's like at that moment you feel the great power comes great responsibility lesson coming full circles in his head. At least to me, that's how I'm picturing it, because like I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. I know his lore, at least a fair bit. Not a fair bit. I know like a good amount of his lore. And it's like the moment at, in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man film, if you get to see the full visual, if you haven't read the comic, is that he chose not to do something and it resulted in the death of his uncle. And you get the feel, I get the feeling that he's Rolodexing that moment in his mind while he's contemplating on just not doing anything, because he already failed with Tony Stark. He's trying to do something. He's failed at that, and now he's busted by the main villain he's been and being antagonized by, and now he's come to the decisions like I'm Spider-Man. I got I cannot let this dude win, because people's gonna get hurt. And so he apologizes to Liz. He gets his original man-made spider suit that he had before he met Tony, and he getting stopped by the Shocker, and who's been monitoring just to make sure he stays put, at the party, or at the dance. Then Ned shows up, helped him out, distracted, Schultz as Peter whipped him up to the school bus. So he hijacks Flash Thompson's car as he's barely driving correctly through the city, just to follow his phone he purposely left in the car, so that we can track him to his hideout. And you get this awesome dialogue from Keaton as he's talking about how guys like Tony Stark, they don't care about guys like us. They send guys like us to clean up their mess or fighting their wars. They leave us, with the table scraps. So once again, harping on the fact that he's the Vulture, and as a Vulture, picks up the scraps in a way. And it's kind of like where in the end, you see because he mentioned they don't care about the little guy, and you see that even a bad guy can be right about certain cases, and just like with Black Panther and Killmonger, you see as Black Panther utilized what he learned from Killmonger, is that instead of trying to roundabout way get black people to get back at the oppressors, he opens up Wakanda and give his people resources to better themselves instead of being closed off to them, and buying up neighborhoods so they can learn art and science and everything like that. Peter ends up sticking with being your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man so he can look out for the little guy the right way, instead of Toomes doing it a very selfish way. At least selfish in a way he's only caring about him and his own family, but he's hurting other people in the process, trying to do his responsible father thing. You get to see the awesome one when, like, Vulture collapses some columns on top of Peter, and you see like an awesome little, like in the water is like a little reflection of half of his face, as because the mask fell off. Half of his face, you see like his face, and then like the mask sticking up. And it's kind of like an awesome one usually you see in the comics. Usually when you see in the comics, whereas like Peter, especially when it's like a spider sense going off, you see like half his face going into like the mask format, and like that kind of thing. And it's like you get to see that here, and you see that kind of with Tom McGuire when, like, in the first film, when half of his mask is kind of ripped and it's like half and half. At least in couple of times, well, every time in his films. And I don't think you get that maybe in the first Mark Webb film with Andrew Garfield, but not in the sequel. So like it's kind of like a thing where you get to see like Peter Parker half of his face in the mask in some fashion. This time is just a reflection. And you get to see like him doing this awesome one. It happens a few times in the comics. The first time I've seen it in the comics where he's lifting something huge off his back, and it's like I'm pretty sure he was like dealing with like the lizard, or I could be confused with somebody else, but they collapse like part of a subway on top, like an abandoned subway up top of Spider-Man. And I remember distinctly in a comic, I don't even know if I have that comic anymore, because I remember because my uncle had that comic, but I don't know if I ever kept it myself. But it was like a moment where it's like he's thinking to himself, or just out loud telling himself, like, Hulk couldn't lift this, Thor couldn't lift this, but he's gonna hurt everybody. It's like it's like if I can't do anything, if I don't do anything, it's like a lot of people's gonna die. It's like, and then you see that same kind of moment, expressed in the film, but in the comics, it's like you get to see like all the pectorals and him, like, because it's like a lot heavier stuff in the comics that he's lifting up, and he's like, because he's saying like, I'm Spider-Man, something. I don't think he said like I'm Spider-Man, but it's like he taps into his willpower and just like exert himself further beyond that he normally has to, and it's like recently obviously a little bit beyond his limit, just a little added boost just to get all that heavy stuff off his back. And a side note, when I remember that, reading that in the comics, I'm like, dude, Hulk and Thor can't lift these things off their back. They're literally the two of the most iconic strong superheroes beyond like maybe like Superman. But that's neither here nor there. And you get to see, Tom Holland's Peter Parker doing almost the exact same thing. So Vulture taking on like a final big job, big heist of robbing Tony Stark's, invisible plane, where it's like, they're moving the Avengers Mansion to Avengers Tower to Avengers Mansion, and all the, weapons and gear and all this other stuff that's being loaded up into this plane and being shuttled off. He's hijacking it, and like he finally catches up with Toomes. They have a big fight. The plane crashes on the beach of Staten Island, and it's like a cool final fight between Vulture and Spider-Man. And as Toomes trying to carry off the at least something, because at least as according to Tinkerer, who is never really captured at the end of this film, because he usually is the kind of like a bad guy in the comics that sets up a lot of bad guy tool tech that they use, that Spider-Man usually fights. But it's like he mentions even one of those crates can set them up for life. So he doesn't want to leave without leaving empty-handed. But his wings are so damaged, and the power source inside is about to go off. Spider-Man saves him, which is like marks like one of the few times in MCU Infinity Saga where the bad guy doesn't die, because usually like they rarely they usually be one and done with especially when it comes to the good villains. But I'm glad they kept Vulture alive, because Michael Keaton is too good to just be killed off. And of course you're gonna see him in Morbius once that comes out in January. But yeah, then Happy comes by with the security detail and cops and see all their stuff, secure, and the Vulture, webbed up and captured. So the jig is up, and Liz and her mother had to like move to Oregon, while during this whole trial thing with the father, who decides to keep, thanks to saving his life, so that way they don't have to put like his family through added grief. He decided to keep Spider-Man's secret identity to himself. So you see at the end where it's like Tony brings Spider-Man along to Avengers Mansion. He's like talking about he's proud of him. He's like doing a great job, and showing off the Iron Spider suit, which is not like the classic Iron Spider suit when it's more like red and gold like the Iron Man suit, but this one has like a little like added blue color to like blue, gold, and red, so it can kind of be a combination of Spider-Man and Iron Man suits. And Peter just tells him like I kind of prefer to stay close to the ground. I'm good. And he's in like surprising Tony of his maturity. And then of course he was planning on introducing Spider-Man as one of the full-fledged Avengers, but he decided to just propose to Pepper Potts instead, to be this big announcement. And then he gave back Peter's suit, and he's trying it on, and you see like Aunt May in the back just seeing this, and like you can see like the classic, one of my favorite quotes in the MCU, like what the and then cuts off. As like you get to see that again in Far From Home. And once I get to that, that's in next week. That's awesome. That's my favorite GIF that I like to use when, like, especially after something like when I saw like Quicksilver in the WandaVision show. When I tweeted that morning, I got like so many likes and retweets about it, because that's literally was my expression when I saw that. I was like, what the fuck? And it's like, and just my mind just kind of like just went to credits on that one. I was like, what? And of course, like blue balled us, by like the end of the show, which is kind of disappointing. But anyway, yeah, I mean that it was a great Spider-Man. This is like like I said, like in the, each iteration of Spider-Man, it's like leans a little bit closer to like the Spider-Man that we expect, and this one hits it. This one is at the moment when they hit the mark perfectly. And it's only like a step up once you get to Far From Home. But God, please leave a comment below and let me know what you guys think about like Spider-Man from Homecoming. Have you watched it recently? I know you guys probably have, because like me, I'm pretty sure a lot of people have been going through all these live action Spider-Man films up to to the point of No Way Home. And after rewatching Homecoming, how do you feel about the movie? Does it still hold up to you after rewatching it? Are there certain glaring aspects that you honestly did not, care too well about? And of course, follow me on my various links in the description. YouTube.com/TalkativeCarl, Patreon.com/TalkativeCarl, Twitter, @TalkativeCarl. And of course, follow me on my, Twitch, twitch.tv/talkativecarl. If you want to follow me on my various, video game walkthroughs, which this coming Friday will be a new walkthrough of Pokemon Brilliant Diamond. So look forward to that. I'm excited for that one. Because I already wrapped up Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, so you can check on my YouTube channel of the complete walkthrough. Because since I was on vacation all last week, I had a lot of time to just power through it. Sometimes doing a double video in a single day because it's so much fun. But yeah, let me know what you guys think, and yeah, I'll be posting pretty soon my Batman Forever spoiler review, and let you guys know what my thoughts on about that movie. Even though a lot of people talk about that movie to death, I just want to give my 2 cents about it because, it's not a bad movie. Honestly, I don't think anybody thinks it's like a bad fun. It's fun bad. So it's not something like, especially after all this time, I think a lot of people have a little bit more appreciation, even with Batman and Robin, which I'll eventually get to next week, because I haven't seen that movie, such a long time. I think I maybe saw that movie at least 3 or 4 times in my entire life since it came out, and I'm going to be rewatching it again after so long, and maybe I'll point out certain things that I actually dig from that movie beyond the ice puns. So look forward to that next week. So I will see you guys soon. Take care and be safe.